Charles Alan Henneman graduated from Towson State College in 1966 with a bachelor's degree in social studies and secondary education. Mr. Henneman taught history and psychology in Baltimore County Public Schools for 19 years before retiring to manage full-time the Worthington Valley Swim Club after purchasing it 5 years previous. In 2008, he purchased a 220-acre camp in Monkton, at which he has a field station in partnership with Towson University. These are his reflections.
Mr. Henneman, thank you for sharing with us your thoughts about your teacher preparation here at Towson University and your subsequent career. This will add greatly to our understanding of the evolution of teacher education at Towson across time. And I guess we should start at the beginning, and that's, if you will, give us a little information about your early social context, where you grew up, what your interests were, what you were thinking about for a future after high school, all those things.
Cover a lot of ground.
I know.
Well, it's interesting that no one in our family had ever gone to college. There was nobody on either side, both my mothers and fathers, that had ever gone to college. So how my father could have been thinking about college when I was born, for me, and also I'm an only child, I have no idea. But there was an insurance man that came around the neighborhood, I think on a weekly basis, and collected dimes for policies and quarters and things like that. He sold my father a policy a month after I was born that would cover all 4 years of my college expenses.
Wow.
And I think it was 14 cents a week. And on my 18th birthday, I was to receive the full amount to pay for 4 years of college. When I started college, I went to Johns Hopkins when I got out of high school for a year, and the tuition was $1,500 a year. The policy was for $1,000. So they undershot it a little bit. It would have been worth 2/3 of 1 year, even though my father had been convinced. But we grew up in some great blue-collar neighborhoods. First with Walbrook through the 2nd grade. Then we moved to Irvington, right behind Mount St. Joseph's High School, and I did the rest of my elementary. And then we moved to Govans. And I think when anybody thinks of Irvington and Govans, they're blue-collar, simple, no spacious, palatial, just apartments, and that's where we lived, in apartments and rented townhouses. As far as social context, I think I was very restless in school. I think I was maybe hyperactive. I don't know, they didn't have those designations back then, but to me, to get through a school day was a challenge. It was a long, arduous thing to sit there for 6 hours, and I really mean that. And I think I was kind of averagey. I do have some of the report cards, and they look kind of average. You know, you're middle, not going to be noticed too much. As a teacher, and they asked me about students in my career, and you remember these great students, and you remember the really poor students, and the C students are really in a fog in your mind, because I taught like 10,000 people or something. So my big break came in life. I have a lot of these. I'm called the luckiest person that's ever lived by a lot of my friends. I seem to fall in mud puddles and come out with silver dollars, but and I don't know why I would be so lucky. But I consider the biggest break in my life the day my mother sent me shopping for 5 grocery items.
Okay.
So I lived in an apartment on Colleen Road. I was in the 3rd grade. I walked down the hill, it's probably a half a mile, not quite a half a mile, but walked down this great big hill, and then it levels off past the brand new school, Beachfield Elementary. And there's this little ma and pa store that's like in the basement of a house, so it's big as a couple rooms, run by Mr. and Mrs. Moran. I'll never forget. There's a lot of things I'll never forget. And she was busy, and she was talking to somebody, and she knew me from coming with my mom. And she said, she looked at the list and said, go pick them up. Usually they follow you around at that time, and they pick it, especially if you want to thing of celery. The lady that runs the store is going to pick which
Right.
thing. So I ran around and picked the 5 items up and came back to the counter, and she ended her conversation and she said, "I'm going to ring them up now and get you out of here. You won't have to wait." And I said, "It's $1.43. She said, "Oh, good." That's really something. And she had the old thing, and she punched in the keys and rang it up. When the tape came out at $1.43, she was, I can't even describe it. She said, "You're a genius." She said, "You're a mathematical genius. No one could do that. That, just by walking and looking at the price on the counter," I think bread was 8 cents a loaf. Obviously, to get $1.42, you had to get something in there. Must have been some hot dogs or something. But I left that store. I don't think my feet were on the ground. And I ran up this hill, which today I think would leave me at St. Joe's. And I burst open the door, and my mother said, "I heard. She called me.
Whoa.
She told me what you did." I imagine anybody could do this. I imagine it wasn't anything at all to add 10 cents and 17 cents and 34 cents, and maybe I did it 3 or 4 times anyhow in my mind. But it started me being very interested in math. So interested that I would choose Poly as a high school, get 750 on my SATs in math,
There you
get
go.
99% on the GRE. I was an average math student. This is what teachers should be doing. This isn't the role of the person at the grocery store, although it's a good role for the person at the grocery store. Some people think of teaching as one thing, and I think of teaching as quite another thing. The idea of sparking somebody. That was the moment. That was the moment that led my 6th grade teacher to invite my mother and father to the school one day. I was shaking in my boots. You don't invite your mother and father to school for tea or to... They sat down, I don't know what I had done, and they said, "I'd like to recommend your son for the accelerated program to do 3 years and 2. We're asked to spot people that we think can think go out of the box," and that wasn't an expression back there in 1950 something, but she said something to that order that I see something. Maybe he could really prosper in this. He'd get better teachers. Me, I'm focused on one thing. She's talking about better teachers and a better curriculum. I got the straight and narrow focus. I could get out of school a year earlier. That's all I cared about. That's all I cared about. School was so boring. It was so tough for me to sit there.
So did that happen?
Yes. My father moved. We went to Govins. Picked up, went to Govins, went to it was a brand new school. I did have great teachers. I can remember every teacher. I've talked to people that can't remember one teacher, not even in high school. And I can remember every teacher I ever had. It's amazing. I can't remember much else. I don't know what I had for breakfast. But I can remember Miss Cater in math and Miss Barber in science, and I just remember everything, what they looked like and what their mannerisms were, and mostly how nice they were or how mean they were. And then one day the guidance counselors came from City and Poly, and boy did they want to speak to these 2 accelerated classes. There was only about 40 of us, about 20 in a class.
So you were doing, was that like 6, 7, and 8 in 2 years?
Yeah,
or
7, 8, and 9.
Oh, 7, 8, and 9.
Back then they called it a junior high instead of a middle school.
Right.
And so we did that in 2 years. We got a quarter of typing instead of a half of typing. And it was crammed in there a little bit, and it was challenging and it was fun. And very good people to be with. But the city counselor and the poly counselor came. I guess it's another way of saying that there's something wrong with me or something that doesn't function the way other people function. My dad went to City. He's my hero. There's nobody like my dad. Obviously, he'd like me to go to City. You can imagine. So the city councilor comes in. He's this handsome, handsome man. and he welcomes everybody, he gives his pitch, and he said, I'll tell you what, we'd like to have every one of you, we'd like you to go to City College. We're close, we're right, the bus is like 8 minutes or 10 minutes, and I can tell you right now that you'd all be welcome, he was just talking to these two accelerated
Right.
classes. The poly guy came in, he looked like Joseph Stalin, that didn't help, Mr. Chef, and he said, we're crowded, we have a tremendous problem dealing with all the kids, we don't need any more students. If you really want to go to Poly, it is a wonderful math and science school. And how I picked Poly, why? The presentation wasn't any good. The guy was kind of scary looking. The city guy looked like a guy you could trust. Anyway, I thought I'd go to Poly. So I made it was the greatest experience of my life. I loved it.
How'd your father feel about your choice?
Always supported me in everything.
Great.
Boy, the city, Thanksgiving was something in our house.
I guess it was.
Thanksgiving was something, and during the years I was there, Poly was winning, and it's a pretty even series over the last 100
Is
years.
it?
Yeah, but my father's always good about that kind of stuff, and he felt that my math, so you would imagine I went into a math teaching career from what I've said so far, but surprises
Yes.
are going to happen.
So here you are at Poly, and with an emphasis in math and science, perhaps.
Right, a school that
Yeah.
I tried to pattern my first couple of years of teaching high school after, and then I realized it was absolutely not applicable. I messed that word up, but
Yeah.
absolutely
Yeah.
no application of
Yeah.
my high school. This high school was amazing. The principal was up there on opening day. He was talking to a couple thousand people, the largest auditorium in Baltimore, used by many schools to graduate. He's up there speaking, talking about the rules and what a poly boy does and how they wear ties even though it's not required and there's no written thing, but you still wear a tie every day to school and stuff. It's funny that I don't have one on right now. I don't look like a poly boy. But he was in the middle of his talk, and he looked up in the balcony. He said, young man, it was huge, it was like going to the Hippodrome. Yeah, the guy chewing the gum. You meet me in my office. As soon as this assembly's over, you meet me in my office. There were 6 kids standing outside his office. That was Poly. The rules were the rules. You did the rule. I tried to Lateness. Didn't work at our high school. Nobody cared when I went to teach there. It was a great high school, but I got the word on lateness. In my junior year, I missed the school. I missed the bus, the 36 bus. It was raining, pouring down. I was standing there on the corner at whatever time, 7:30, and the bus went by. Just went by. I could see people standing. I was soaked already, and I waited about 15 minutes. And the next bus came by, and I got on it, and my heart was pounding, and I'm thinking, you can't be late. They say, how many times have they told us, you can't be late, you can't. And I got to the school and ran across the very large cement front of the school, up to the 3rd floor to the mechanical drawing room where the homeroom teacher, Pell Kangas, I never heard of a man named Pell, very nice man in general. And he slammed the door shut on me. I started to appear at the door, and he walked over. And so the announcements ended, and the people were starting to go to the next period, and I came in, and he said, "You're late." Sir, the bus was, the bus came by, and I got down there at my normal time, and he said, "I'll tell you what, that's not good." It's my junior year. I've been in school almost a year and a half. I said, "Well, I won't be late anymore. I'll get down there and get the bus before that one." He said, "Well, I guess so, because we don't stand for that." And about 4 months later, it happened again. And I was once again about a minute late, and they sent me to the principal's office. The only time in my life I ever went to the principal's office. And I sat there, and I stewed. They didn't want to see me in 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes. I sat there and thought. Then the announcement came that I could see the principal. And I walked in the office and closed the door and sat down. I said, I see here you live on Midwood Avenue. I don't know what that had to do with anything,
Yeah.
but I did agree with him. It seems to me there's a couple high schools on your way. Like you're coming all the way down here to Poly, half an hour on the bus. I see there's some other schools that you could go to and probably get there on time. I didn't know where this was leading, but it looked like I was out of the school. And he said, I can let this one go, your second lateness. There won't be a third one. And he said, you understand that? Walked out of the office, and I was getting to high school like at 6:30. I was getting to high school and doing homework. Saved an hour's homework from the night before. We had plenty of homework. I've never been late. When you scheduled me for this interview, you had no worry. I can't be late. My friends call 911 if I'm 5 minutes late. And start go down to the river and drag the river. Well, at the high school I taught at, they would be late 30 times or 40 times. It was all a big joke. It was all slow. So what I'm saying is that my upbringing gave me some very firm views about the way it should be. I went out in the real world of teaching and saw that a lot of those ideas really didn't hold much weight if it was a wishy-washy administration or they just weren't gonna. But I learned a lot of things that I would use later, especially when I got to teach psychology. And one more story, and then we'll head off to Towson University. I just tell this one because it's my favorite one, and maybe it won't be relevant to everybody that hears this tape, but it's an unbelievable story. I had this fabulous history teacher, the best teacher at Poly, I thought, Mr. Silverman. He was the world's authority on some things. He was the world's authority on the signer of the Declaration of Independence, William Paca. I know what you're going to say, William Paca, but it's William Paca according to Mr. Silverman. And he was the authority on the city of Baltimore, and he was authority on quite a few things. He was quite a scholar and the department chairman at Poly. And he was giving his class one day, and we were sitting there, because at the end of the class, the only special treat that students ever got at Poly in 3 years that I went there, at the end of the class, with 5 minutes to go, he would tell an antidote. That's what he called it. And it would be a story about how General Grant's drinking and what Lincoln said, not about the real history, the part, the battles,
The
and
dates.
but it would be about a person, about Lincoln, a little personal. There was the antidote at the end of the class.
Yeah.
Two boys were talking at the back of the class. Mr. Silverman never got mad, never yelled, never was nasty, he was a very stately person, unlike myself. My teaching idea was to get in there with the kids and try to be real, but he was a scholarly man. Taught a good class. It's kind of fun, but dry, but he had the antidote. He looked back at the back of the class, shook his head, and said those words. Today, we are not having our antidote. That's what he said.
Wow.
The bell rang at the end of the class went out in the hall, grabbed these two guys, said, that's the last time you're going to be talking in class.
Yeah.
Because we want to hear, sounds like something from Seinfeld. I used a lot of that in my teaching, the thing that this is what we could be doing if you. So anyway, then I went to Hopkins, didn't like it, was going to be electrical engineer.
Well, that was my question. What did you think you would be doing?
Electrical engineer.
Okay.
All of us Poly boys were engineers.
Right.
We took math and science all day long. So we were going to be engineers. Well, I think an awful lot of them were, too. Hopkins environment wasn't very pleasant to me. An awful lot of scholarly people. You just don't want to be surrounded with everybody smarter than you are. I don't know what, but I didn't like it. Some people that I was working at the Towson YMCA, which is very close by where we're sitting right now. I could walk there in about 7 or 8 minutes. Had gone into teaching, were telling me about going into studies for teaching. Say, maybe that's something you would like, working with kids. I'm thinking, a person that doesn't like school, then the only reason you could go into teaching is because you wanted to do better. That's the only reason you could possibly go into teaching, because you thought you could do better. So I applied to Towson, and they transferred enough credits. I guess I was a sophomore when I got here.
Wow.
1963. And it looked just like it does today. I felt like I was in a time warp. There's a book by Bellamy, Looking Backwards, where the guy falls asleep somehow in a trance for, I don't know what, 70 or 80 years and wakes up in a different world. And that's what it's like walking through this campus right now. It's amazing. The cinder track that I ran on is gone. The old dilapidated building, it's all brick, matching, beautiful classrooms. It's amazing to be here and to think that that would transition into a full-fledged great university.
It is amazing.
But
Considerable growth.
Yeah, it wasn't by plan or anything. Although there's another story. There's always a story with me. And you got to tell me eventually to not tell any more stories. In our senior year at Poly, we were herded into the auditorium, slapped with a board on the chairs, and given a test. We'd all been tested to death, although we didn't know about the SATs. We just took them, and they just said next Friday. Nobody prepped them or planned them. There wasn't any preparation at all. You just took the test. You're supposed to measure what you know and what you...
Right.
So I don't know how there could be courses to teach you to take the test and spend half the time in a school when you should be learning the information. And we're taking this test for about 2 hours. It seemed like 2 hours. I don't know what the actual time was, but it was about 2 hours. And the whole test was, would you rather read to a child or pick apples? would you rather pour cement or work in a grocery store? Would you rather read to a blind person or test drive cars? It was the craziest thing. We got out of there, and I think lunch was the next thing, and everybody sat there and said, what? There's no factual information, there's no math, there's no punctuation, there's nothing. It's all about would you like to do this or do that? And we forgot about it completely. It was just like something thrown at us, and nobody ever said anything about probably why you're taking it. But before graduation, the results came back, and it indicated I'm supposed to work with people. It clearly indicated.
Interesting.
It was called the Cooter Preference Inventory. And I'll never forget how dumbfounded we were and how stupid I thought the results were. Maybe there was a precursor somewhere that I'm supposed to be out there dealing with people. So anyway, I arrived at Towson. The running community knew me. The guys from the varsity, from the cross-country team came and sought me out pretty soon. I was running around the campus and down New York Road and everywhere that they ran. So I had an instant group of friends. That was a good thing.
Yes, that was very nice. So you came in as a sophomore, so you had to sort of choose what you were going to do pretty early on.
Yes.
And where did math go?
It's hard to describe. I had one great history teacher, a swashbuckling guy from Oxford. He was really something. I had Mr. Silverman, who I've already alluded to, at Poly. My father had a keen interest in history, but I had already turned my back on him and gone to Poly. That'll be a funny thing later on. My father, in his late 40s, starts his education in college, and that'll be a little bit later when I'm helping him with his homework.
Cool.
It's neat helping your father with his math. But anyway, I'm not exactly sure. I was really sure, but history seemed like something I had an interest in, and I wanted to be a teacher. And maybe I look back at the teachers I had at Poly in math. We tend to measure a subject by the teachers we've had. So somebody will say, I hate English, but they really hate Miss Johnson. They hate the way they were treated. I don't think you hate English or something like that.
Interesting
So
observation.
a lot of times your favorite subject has to do with your favorite teacher, I think. Anyway, here I was going to teach history. I was in the education program at Towson State. I still have a hard time with that. But
Towson State College.
Towson State College.
Do you remember anything about that coursework or
The educational part, not the academic part.
Right.
I do. I remember that I thought it was really easy. That there wasn't any course that you were going to be marked hard on. They wanted you there. They wanted their chance at you to tell you in preparation for what you're going to do. But I remember thinking you were always safe with those courses. There wasn't much homework. That's my experience. It could have been another teacher that I didn't have, or avoided, or whatever. Kind of fun. Not very practical. Mostly historical context and talking about Mrs. Montessori and people in other countries and systems, but it wasn't the kind of thing like you turn your back to right on the board and you get hit in the head with a spitball.
Yeah.
What do you do? Well, you have to know what to do. You have somebody somewhere is gonna, but I don't remember much of that kind of stuff.
No.
Joey's been late 7 times, and what are you gonna say? That's kind of what I suspected it was gonna be, but it wasn't. No, it was more about the theory of John Dewey and people like that, historical figures. If I took over Towson tomorrow and somehow you got rid of the current, it would be pretty practical. It would be pretty practical. They wouldn't have to know a whole lot about what happened in France in the 17th century. That's me.
Yes.
It's just me.
Well, but at some point you do have to go out and do some kind of student teaching experience.
Yes, you do.
Tell us about that.
The greatest. Lucky. I'll use that word several more times. Lucky. There were 2 people that the students said would be the most enthusiastic teachers in our. I feel very fortunate to be one of them. The other guy got a horrible student teaching. Never taught a day in his life.
Really?
I can see him. I could name him. I don't know if that would serve anything. I know he went to work with the public PBS. Really great guy.
Interesting.
But he got the clinker, and I got the good person. Always been that way. Just like, I think student teaching is about 2/3 your cooperating teacher. That's my opinion. I got a student teacher assignment in middle school at Herring Run Junior High in Baltimore City. A lower middle class or upper lower class, very much like the neighborhoods I grew up in. There was a larger percentage of black students than I'd ever encountered in my life. It was really neat, and they were of the neatest in these classes. My cooperating teacher, who's one of the top people in my life, I still to this day can't remember if it's Mrs. Stouffer, which is my first choice, or Mrs. Schaefer. I'm thinking Stouffer, but it might have been Mrs. Schaefer. I don't know why. Doesn't sound like somebody that has a generally pretty good memory that you would forget. She was lovely. She was helpful from the first day I walked in. There were like 8 days, I believe you were still taking coursework at Towson. Remembering this is 45 years ago. I think there were 8 days where you came out on Wednesday and you attended the whole day. She had 5 classes. And by the fourth at least, she had me helping teach a class I remember the first couple of times it was like she'd be teaching the first half hour, and then she'd say, now we're going to talk about the medieval castle and how it was actually set up. And Mr. Henneman here, our student teacher, actually has information, has worked on that, and he's going to teach the last. That was pretty easy when they throw you in for 15 minutes, you know. And then I was teaching a class or two by the end of those 8 days, and then I started. Then come the 8 weeks of student teaching. Now here's something that shows you what kind of person. She had the two gifted 9th grade world history classes, the two gifted and talented, but they weren't called that, but they were exceptional. She had 2 average 9th grade classes, and she had a below average 8th grade geography class. That was her schedule. She only had 2 preparations, but the second was just one geography, which I didn't know as much about as history. And what she did with me is she gave me the 2 top classes for the first 3 or 4 weeks. The 2 Joyce Lampka. Never got anything but 100 from anything I ever assigned. I guess she's
I wonder where she is.
Pulitzer Prize winner or something. I can remember a lot of them. But anyway, I had the 2 great classes. Then I had the 2 average classes the next 2 weeks, giving me a teaching load of 4, and then she gave me the geography class for the last 2 weeks. You know, most teachers would slide you the students that are least receptive and least. Everything was like that. She'd excuse herself when she came into the classroom. She'd say, I'm going to observe the 3rd period today, and if I hope I don't have to interrupt your class, but if I do, I'm sorry. If I have to pick up something, she would tiptoe in sheepishly. As we got going, in other words, she was trusting me.
Yes.
When I left after 8 weeks, and by the way, the Towson person was the best in the world. William Hartley. I didn't know him. From. How is it I can't remember the name of the lady who was my teacher? Confusing and confounding. Was wonderful. I think he had 2 observations. He came in one day, I'll never forget. A student raised their hand, asked a question. We were talking about World War II, World War I. And he wanted to know if it snowed in England. We're talking about the battlefields of Europe. I could not answer. I did not know the answer to the question. I was standing up there. There was this 9th grader, very bright kid, asked me the question. So I should know the answer to that. I don't want to make something up. I'm going to look it up tonight, and tomorrow I'm going to tell you about the climate of England. So class ended. Mr. Hartley came up, congratulated me, said I'm doing well, really proud of control of the class and the tempo of the class. Told me that yes, it snowed in England. They had plenty of times where they had blizzards too, and that I gave exactly the right answer.
There you
They
go.
should know that you don't know everything, you know. And that was wonderful. So when I left, the principal was Dr. Virginia Roeder, who wrote articles in the Sun paper a lot, column. I think it was mostly fashion and manners. Very eloquent woman, and Carol Wagner was the vice principal. It was a very innovative school. It had 4 wings. It was like a central area. You only have 1 gym and home ec and all that. But then you have these 4 radiating wings, the signers of the Declaration of Independence. Chase, Carroll, Stone, and Paco. PACO. I informed them that when I got there,
I see.
that everybody thought it was PACO, but it was PACO, because I knew the world's authority on William PACO. And they offered me a job of teaching social studies at Herring Run. And the math teacher, who I would play with the kids out on the ball fields, I loved that. Always did at Delaney. My friend Phil Liskey and I at Delaney did a lot of ball playing with the kids after school and even on Saturdays. And the math teacher offered me a math job. He asked me if I told him I had a math minor. I left with 2 jobs bagged in Baltimore City at the school that I really had come to like. Teachers were so kind to me, and I can't name a bad experience. My father, years later, would go out to student teach, get this hag, wouldn't even leave the room, wouldn't trust him with anything. So discouraged, he never went into teaching after he graduated. I have a folder of the letters the kids wrote when he left, and they were, "Please don't go, Mr. Henneman." That's the most important thing in a person's life as a teacher, what the student teaching experience is leading you into. I couldn't wait. But Baltimore City would not let me take those jobs.
Pardon?
I went to school in Baltimore City, including their accelerated middle school, the best high school, in my opinion. Student taught in Baltimore City, graduated with a decent grade point average. They said no.
Why?
There was a teacher's exam, and it was offered in March. And they said I had to take the teacher's exam. I couldn't teach without taking a teacher's exam.
Interesting. So anybody who was to teach in Baltimore City had to take, and I assume pass, this exam.
Nobody at Towson even mentioned it to me.
Yes.
I didn't know. I had my application in. Here I was ready to graduate. It's the end of January. And they were saying you can start February 1. We would love to have you in the faculty. 2 jobs. I was going to take the social studies job. But it was nice.
Very nice.
So I applied to Baltimore County.
So why did you elect not to take the test, or
I wanted to start working.
right away?
Yes. That would have meant September. I don't think you could walk in the middle of March.
I see.
I didn't really check that out.
Yeah.
But I applied to Baltimore County. Lo and behold, there's a teacher whose husband was transferred to Chicago at Delaney High School, a brand new school in the top community of the, the best of the best. I'm not lucky. I'm good. I try to tell myself that, but it always comes back to lucky. Off I went. I had a job at Delaney. How lucky am I? Johnny Carson would probably pounce on that. I go out like on a Friday to get the books. I'm going to be teaching a couple preparations, and I need the books. Here I got the books. These aren't these aren't junior high school kids. You could probably fool them. These are high school kids. They're bigger, they know more.
And this is Delaney.
And I'm going to be teaching Monday. And I get the books on Friday. I got to stock up some lesson plans. Can't just do Mondays or Mondays and Tuesdays. This is 1st of February, 1966. And the snow starts falling. And 25 or 27 inches of snowfall. And school is canceled for a week. On Friday, the roads are perfect. Anybody can go anywhere in Baltimore, but they're not going to open the school.
No, not for a
The
day.
principal calls a faculty meeting. I get my first chance of meeting the faculty. I'm sitting kind of near the back row. A couple of people said hi to me. I told them I was new and I was just out of college. I was coming in to take Mrs. Hirsch's place. The principal finishes the meeting. He said, wait a minute. The meeting's over, but I'd like to introduce you to a new teacher in our faculty. As you all know, Mrs. Hirsch is leaving at the middle of the year. And Mr. Henneman up there, he's going to be starting Monday. Mr. Henneman has just gotten paid for his first week of work. I got booed in the faculty meeting, although they came up and slapped me on the back afterwards. I got paid for my first week of teaching, sitting home making lesson plans. Not lucky. If you're good, you're good. I conjured up the snow.
Impressive.
Really is, isn't it? Really, you can't get luckier than that. I couldn't get a job in Baltimore City, which was going downhill faster than I wanted. I felt committed. But I got a job in Baltimore County, which at that time, I think things have changed. that was the place.
Mm-hmm.
That was really the place. And Delaney was the place.
Uh-huh.
We had
Indeed.
PhDs on the faculty and all kinds of choice people that had been brought in from other schools to open it up.
Wow.
That's what I say. Wow. Should I give Towson credit for all that? Well, I don't know. I don't know. They thought getting a person from Towson was good enough, so. You know, they got me the student teaching at the perfect place with the perfect person. Why didn't they get Bob? Started to give his whole name. Why didn't he get the good student teaching thing? I'd probably be a plumber. Life is like that. Life is like that.
Now, one of the things that I thought you might want to share is your early involvement with the YMCA, because that seems to have been a significant influence.
It is. A friend of mine named Jim Kemos, boy, that's, when I was 16 years old, I graduated from high school when I was 16 years old. There's a lot of story that can't be told. They don't give me, we're not going to be here a day and a half. But I had a first appointment from the Naval Academy, leaving Poly. I was a champion cross-country runner, and I was the Baltimore City, even at age 16, I won the mile championship. So the coach at Navy, I'd gotten an appointment, which they found out later. You think research wasn't done properly, but you have to be 17 on July 1st. I wasn't 17, so I couldn't go. And then I went to Hopkins and all that. But at the day I was 16, I went to an A&P store at Giddings in York to apply, and they said they didn't have a job, but they thought there was one down at Woodburn and York Road, and I got a job down there. And I worked there about 11 months or something. It was about a year. And this incident happened. And they asked me to go back and get cigarettes out of a cage. They had the cigarettes locked up in the back of the meat department in a cage. They gave me the key. And they said they wanted, 5 cartons of Marlboro and 5 cartons of Chesterfield or something. I went back, they had candy in there and all that. And I unlocked the thing, got the cigarettes, and I saw the assistant manager hiding back there. And I'm figuring I worked here 11 months. Totally honest, never taken a candy bar, know the rules, and they're watching me. And at the same time, Jim Kemos had come and said he's director of the camp here, and they needed some counselors for the summer. So I figured anybody that knew me for a year was going to follow me back there and see if I was stealing cigarettes.
Right.
Never smoked a cigarette in my life. Candy I like a lot, too much. But I left the job. I was making about $1.80 an hour. That was huge back then, union wage. Back at that time, $1.80 was, you were doing well. Took a job making $40 a week for a 50-hour week with an overnight and all that, working with kids. And then my friend Vernon Rosenberger, friend from Towson that I'd gone to school with, he was teaching a program for special kids at night. I never worked with special needs kids, and then we started a program where I entered his program as working with him. So I did that for years, about 3 years, working with this Friday night program. Really cut your dating out. You had to wait till it was like 6 to 9, and you couldn't go out till 9 o'clock. I was a counselor about 3 years, assistant director 2 or 3 years, then director of the boys camp, and then I was the overall director of all the camps, the boys camps and the girls camps and all the programs.
And that was specifically for Towson, or was that broader?
Towson meaning the metropolitan area?
I meant the Towson YMCA, or?
Yes, I never left that building.
Okay.
So they offered, when I started teaching, they offered me a job, and my starting salary in teaching was $5,200, and I think they offered me like $46 for a 12-month job. It wasn't a great decision there, but I still.
But you still did summer.
For the summers for a while.
For the summers.
Yeah. I was there quite a while. It was great.
Yeah.
It was really great.
So you were at Delaney for 19 years.
66 to 85.
Yeah. And did more than just teach history? You
I did.
developed a new program, or?
Yeah. How lucky. It always comes back. If you'd meet my wife, you'd know what the word. I'm married to a special, special woman.
And when does she come into the picture?
Well, let's get started with Delaney. She'll come in, all right.
Okay.
But I was teaching mostly world history, a little bit of U.S., not much. Mostly world history. And somewhere around 1971, they called every teacher from Baltimore County to the auditorium at Randallstown High School. It was near the end of the year, and the coordinator, Mr. Osborne, Cliff Osborne, said that the POD, Problems of Democracy class offered to all 12th graders, that it wasn't enough. If they were going to get social studies, and social studies was really going to lead them on different paths. And he proposed offering about 6 courses: an archaeology course with real sites. They started out at Oregon Ridge. Del Groover was the first person in the county, I believe. He was one of our teachers who liked archaeology. And economics, political science, sociology, psychology. I heard that, and I said, here I am.
Yeah.
I'm going to teach psychology. I went to my department chairman and said, well, could I start that course? Can I, offer it to seniors? And he said, what preparation do you have? I had a minimal number of courses that you take along the way.
Uh-huh.
And I said, I'll go get I'll go out and get a master's, and I want to teach psychology. Yeah. And that was it. That was it. Instead of just becoming fun, teaching school became a blast. Every day became incredible. Every moment. I taught for 14 years psychology. I started it without any curriculum at all. I just started it. They said, teach it. And I taught it. I made my own course up. It was so much fun. I think I would have pooped out in history. I think I would have eventually, yes, the Egyptians did this, but I don't know how relevant I can really make it. I'll try and tell stories and stuff like that, and I am a storyteller as a teacher. And I got to teach this course, and things happened. And I got field trips that no other person has gotten since and never will get. I had connections at Rosewood, Spring Grove. I took them to the inner sanctums. Nobody ever. One kid, the thing that changed it all, we were talking about B.F. Skinner, Burris Frederick Skinner, famous psychologist, behavior modification, which has done an awful lot in both schools and in institutions. And they're talking about rat experiments. And what can you learn from rats? Well, basically, you learn about behavior. What they will do for things is very similar to what people will. I said, if I had a Skinner box, then I would get rats. I never touched a rat in my life. And I really had no great intentions of touching a rat. And Fred Rigger built the Skinner box. Man, it was unbelievable. I'd say it was that high, about that long, maybe about that wide. But
yeah.
It's about like that. Clear plexiglass, half-inch plexiglass, with a little popsicle stick mounted at one end, connected to wires and batteries. And when somebody pressed on the thing, a light would light and a little sound would go off. And that's the basis of what you start. You start working with food fed instantaneously. When the rat presses the button, food comes, and eventually he does 5, and then he does 20, and then he does 100. And you see this rat sitting there going 100 times. I'm trying to show them about motivation and things about what people will do when they're trained to do things and they know what's going to happen. But then there are 4 schedules of reinforcement: fixed ratio and variable ratio, fixed interval, variable interval. And I would create a lazy rat. that wouldn't do squat because he was put on this system. And the other rat's in there, and you see the two rats working, and the one guy's, eventually he presses the bar and something comes out. Because based on that interval, you had to wait 20 seconds for it to come out. He learned it was all wasted until the 20 seconds were up. So the rat would wander around the cage and then go over there and press the, and I'd ask the kids, tell me about that rat. And they'd say, that's a lousy rat. He doesn't work. He's like a poor person. That's what they would say. And then the other rat was working just, working himself into a frenzy to get these little, very delicate pellets. That changed it all until the next kid built me a maze. A maze was twice the size of this table, stained like corrugated steel, and it led all over the plate. And by placing food, when you got to these different places where you go left and right, and then if you always placed it on the right, eventually you couldn't see the rat move to where the food was at the end. You couldn't, it was a blur. The rat made all the right turns. I had these kids roped in. They couldn't wait to come to class. I couldn't wait to do the class. They wanted to know what I'm going to do next. Can I teach him to stand on his hind legs? Sure, I can. I just dangle the food there, and eventually he'll walk around like a fiddler on the roof. We did things nobody's ever done. They threw my stuff away when I left. If Towson teaches people to think out of the box, if their commercial is the one that they use, if that's important, then God bless them. Because I can't stand doing what everybody else does. And this was the most amazing. I would tell them, in a couple of weeks, we're going to get the rats. One day a rat got out and got under the cabinet in the middle of class. I could see some girls a little upset. So I did something really stupid. I reached in the dark underneath the cabinet, got down on the floor and reached in. The rat bit me. And I grabbed him, put him back in the box, and was teaching the class, holding my hand. Then I could see the blood coming down. And I said, we know you got bit. Why don't you go to the nurse? So I can finish the class. I'll get to get a Kleenex. And I'm thinking, I might get rabies. This might be my luck is going to run out. But the laboratory rats, and they don't have rabies. They're white rats. And the nurse told me that right away, and I went back with a new, things happen in class. You try not to upset the students. But so now I'm teaching psychology. I'm as happy as a person could be. My cross-country teams are winning every race they ever run. They're 25 county champions, 5 district championships in a row, 2 state championships in a row. Go to meets with 100 schools and slaughter everybody else. I learned how to coach. This is another story because it's very different than what you think, the way you really get in with kids and what you really do to coach championship teams. But then my wife arrives at school, the dance teacher, and all I can say is I noticed her. She's very, very pretty. And one day in the faculty room, she asked me for some advice, and I talked to her. But they were working the heck out of her. She was teaching 6 periods a day and coming back at night to rehearse dance company. And she started out with no facility. I think of that because we both started programs. She lasted 35 years and retired in June. So I didn't even make 20 quite. We had 54 years between us. She's an incredible teacher. She's the person you can use as the model. I'm a bit crazy. But she came into school and we started jogging together. There was a little jogging group after school. And we started jogging, talking, went on a date. And she pestered me the rest of the time to marry. I never stopped. No. And we got married and had 2 wonderful kids, highly educated, very successful. Now we're going to do the cruise part and the trip part and all that. But lest we digress, we're at Delaney.
We are.
I'm living at the top of the scale of teachers. I have 5 classes that are all the same. It's a semester course. I can tell my jokes twice in the same year. If you don't think that's something, to be able to use all your shtick
Yeah.
a couple of times,
Yeah.
they're dying to get into class. They're sitting on the heater. A kid does the smallest little thing that bothers me. I call him up after class. I say, "Hey, Bob, I got 41 kids in here. You want to get out of here? I don't need another kid. I need a kid who cares." "No, sir." "I'm sorry. Mr. Silverman, I'm going to take away your antidote." Those that fail to learn from their experiences, that's the definition of stupid. If I'm running another airline and that airline is going down faster than, I look at Southwest and what do? I copy it. Why are they making money? I don't understand that. I don't understand that. I do know I would love to teach education courses to young people.
I think we could make that happen.
I'm just saying. That's me.
So everything's great. You're
Oh,
teaching what you want to teach.
Yeah. So why would I get involved with
married.
anything else?
Right.
You would be doing this for the rest of your life.
Right.
A couple of days I sat in the faculty room and
Now
really
you're-
aggravated people. I said, "You know what?" They're talking about how much fun I'm having. I said, "You know what? They're even paying me to do this." So therefore, that's why I did it for 40 years and never did anything else.
Well,
Not exactly.
Well, not exactly. Something happens and you find yourself with another opportunity.
Knocking at my door.
Yeah.
I'm walking my Labradors around my house in the backyard. I have 2 acres, 4.4 acres. That was the house on Knox Avenue. And the lady that lived next to me, Mrs. Seal, Loretta Seal, lovely lady, calls me. Her house was on my trail where I walk my dogs. Her house was next door, excuse me. And she said, "Mr. Al," I don't know why, she's older than I am, but she called me Mr. Al. "They're going to close the swim club. It's the only thing out here. What do I do with my kid? Why don't you buy it?" Hey, yeah, sure. I think I was making like $27,000 a year, with a master's degree and 15 years of teaching or something like that.
And 2 kids to...
No, we're not married yet. In 1982 we got married, so I'm
you're
still
not.
working on that.
I see.
That's going to take a while.
Right.
This is not going to be an easy project.
I see.
She's got plenty of there's a lot of competition there. I always thought it was funny. So what do? The next time I go jogging, I have to go alter my route and run past the swim club. Just happened that way. There's a sign the size of a billboard that you see on a highway for sale, has the name of the realtor and the phone number, and the phone number is, I got pictures at home of that, but it ends in 7,000. I can jog home and remember that, whatever it is, it's something 7,000. So I call up the realtor, ask for this particular man, and he answers the phone. I said, "I'd like to know how much the swim club costs." I really felt stupid, I might add. Person making $27,000 a year. It's a 25-acre swim club with 4 tennis courts, Olympic-sized pool, playground, bathrooms, club, snack bar. And, but at any rate, nothing happens until you make it happen.
Right.
And he said, "Who are you?" Gave him my name and address. And I said, "Who are you? Are you just another Are you just another nosy neighbor?"
Oh.
He said, "I get so many calls. How much does the swim club cost?" I said, "No, sir, but I wouldn't be in the game if you say certain numbers, and I have no idea." Could have been $1 million. I wouldn't maybe have been surprised. So about 2 weeks later, he calls me back and says, he had said there were some offers already on the table and didn't want to mess things up right now. he called back and he said, well, in reality, they want me to talk to everybody. There's nothing going on. It's been for sale for a year. And they really want to talk to people, reach out. So I'll cut this one. So he said, I'm a little bit confused on that. He said it was $225,000. I said, wow. I didn't say anything really to him, but I'm thinking, 225, even in 1980, although the world's fallen apart, interest rates are 18%. It's really a rough time to borrow money. And I said, I'd get back to him, could I have a tour? And he showed me around. Couldn't walk out to the tennis courts, the grass was this high. He was about 80 years old, old Southern gentleman. And I looked at it and I thought, wow. Look, I could do this and I could do that and I could. My mind was, I don't think I slept for a month. It was just like, is this crazy or is it crazy? Or one of the guys at the pool was a realtor. One of the guys at Delaney was a realtor, Gary Schreiber, lacrosse coach. He said, make him an offer. Just start a conversation. Make him a stupid offer. Offer him $150 and tell him that they had to do the financing. So I wrote $150 just to get the thing started, just to start a dialogue. $150,000 for 25 acres in Worthington Valley with a pool that's as long as a football field. And you know, it's stupid, but. And about 2 days later, they called and said, "Thank you. We're selling it to you."
For 150?
Yeah. So had to go to a meeting to get cleared to buy it, and I went to a meeting at the Holiday Inn on Joppa and the way to the Beltway, and they had a dinner meeting, invited me to dinner, and then I was to leave while they had a brief meeting, and then they were going to vote, and then they were going to tell me whether they'd sell it to me. Everybody came up at the meeting, slapped me on the back. You had my kid at the Towson YMCA. You taught my kid at Delaney. They said, we don't need to have a meeting. We don't need to go anywhere. We'd love you to buy the club, and we'll hold the financing. That's how I got involved in the Worthington Valley Swim Club. I didn't make money till sixth year. I had to redo everything, new tennis courts, new this, new septic. But and I stayed teaching. I did them both. Boy, that was a tough.
I guess so.
I got married during that time. Worked night
You were
and day.
busy.
I was everything, the secretary, the showing people. So then I was an entrepreneur, different kind of career.
Wow.
Left teaching
Certainly.
in '85. It got to be overwhelming. And plus, I could make more money, and you got to have some time.
Yeah.
Teaching's the most fun I ever had, though.
Interesting. A question.
Okay.
Do you think anything in your preparation or in your teaching career translated into your business ventures?
Honesty. It's kind of an honor system at Poly, and doing things the right way, treating people the right way. I think that the society we live in right now is a sham. I think people are not friendly, and they don't go out of their way. You're one of the wonderful exceptions. I've enjoyed our conversation. I'm not saying that because we're on the, but I went to a golf course at Cape May this last weekend on the way to a football game in Charlottesville with my friend. We had a bag of trash to get rid of. And my friend who was driving, who I've known since we met at the Towson YMCA in 1962, Jeff Gunther, lovely man, just incredible. He got the bag of trash out and gave it to the first guy we met, sort of the guy that checks you in, and said, I'd like to get rid of this. We brought it along because he stopped trash collection at his summer house down in Bethany Beach, and he pulled out a $5 bill and said, could you get rid of that? And the guy said, put your money away. He said, this is what we do. We make people, we're trying to make your day. We went in to sign up, and that guy in there was that way, and we went in, and the ranger that showed us where the first hole is, told us all about the course. Everybody went. I almost don't know how to act when people are like that, because it's the right way. And there's a way to treat people, and that's what we did at the club all those years. We started with 200 families, and we wound up with 1,000 families. We couldn't take any more families. we made it all based on families and kids and safety, and it was really fun to build it up.
Yes.
But after 25 years, I woke up one day and said, I can't do it anymore.
Right.
I want to travel, and all summer I'm locked up here for 4 months.
Uh-huh.
Surprised the heck out of my friends and my wife and everybody,
Yeah.
my kids.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to play golf for the rest of my life and do nothing.
Right. And how long did that last?
About 2 years.
Uh-huh.
I did play a lot of golf.
I guess you did.
Like 5 days a week.
Yeah, but
But I
there
needed
was
something.
time left in your day.
I needed something to tinker with.
Uh-huh.
So there we are on Christmas Day, 2008, because it'll be 5 years this Christmas, 2007. Christmas Day, the wonderful opening of the presents, the family all there.
Yeah.
And eventually in the afternoon, they want to take a nap because it's pretty hectic, making brunch and doing all this and
Yeah,
having everybody there
sure.
and go somewhere and settle down. Started reading the paper. 228 acres in Monkton, Maryland for sale. Camps. Have run camps there since 1938. Men are too old to continue. Really want to sell this to somebody who's interested in kids and wants to have programs. I wish the paper hadn't come. They don't have to have a paper on Christmas Day. I was out there the next day looking, walking around, looking,
Yes.
talking to neighbors.
Yeah.
The people were not available. The person that wrote the article for the Sun was away for a week. And the contact number I was given for these who owned the camps, they weren't available, probably visiting their families. And it took me into the new year to get a tour and talk to the people. And it was a sad story. Men, they bought it in 1938. They were the salt of the earth. They were the Kiwanis, the Optimists, the Rotary, and the American Legion. And they worked together for 70 years. They formed a board which consisted of the president and vice president of each club.
Mm-hmm.
Who worked for 70 years to do things for kids. Never took a penny out. Any money they had, they put back. It was an American, I don't think it ever happened with clubs like that, to jointly buy something.
Right. Right, right.
And so I had bought, I didn't mention who it was, but I bought Worthington from the Loch Raven Kiwanis Club. So they had owned it. So I was kind of going into the same thing. You can't build houses. This is a land in conservation. It's a land that's going to stay that way forever. It's on the Gunpowder River. It's beautiful. They got me in another project. This will be my last project for sure. I'm finished, worn out. 5 years. We started out with 5 scout groups a year camping out. We just had our 36th one last weekend. We have 37 and 38 coming in this weekend.
Wow.
So we had from 5 to, I love that idea of building something. Like the psychology program at Delaney. I love the idea of starting out, taking something that's a wreck, because nobody can ever accuse you of being a failure. I couldn't wreck it more. The Worthington Valley Swim
Right.
Club was wrecked. And this camp was wrecked.
Yes.
Fixed up the dining hall. Guys that right now as we talk are tiling the floor on the Nature Lodge. Got a $6,000 project to put these really nice earth tone tiles. So I like things where you can't lose.
But then you have this 228 acres and you're doing all this summer camping and obviously into the fall, given that we're mid-October and people are still using it in
All winter.
October. All winter.
Yeah.
But it seems like it was destined to do more than just be camps.
Yes, it was.
And how did that come to be? How did you come back to your alma mater with this idea?
Very interesting. I got to tell you who gets the credit. A lot of people can take the credit. The provost that came out to look at it, and I guess even the president. Laurie Armstrong. I had hosted my class's 40th, I think. We're about 45 right now. must have been the 40th reunion, but it was about 5 years ago, so that was right, at my home.
Uh-huh.
We had about a turnout of about 50. And I'd hosted this at my home and met Lori. What a nice person to deal with. And so were the other members of her staff. But we picked up a friendship out of this, and it became more than just a job. And I just started thinking, the only thing that's going to happen during the school year, starting in September and running around till May, the only thing that's going to happen is I'm going to have people there on Saturday and Sunday. Friday night they come in about dinner time. That's all. There's never going to be a camp in the middle of the winter. And I couldn't see it. I'm trying to think of what I could do. I thought maybe the college would be interested in coming out there and bringing students and studying the plants and animals and the ecology and the whole deal. Maybe. And I called Lori expecting to have another harried person that's got so much, so to say, on their plate. I love that. And man, she was, what? You're talking about the college using it free to come out and have a, the provost was out there in a couple days walking around, and then the science teachers were out there in another week walking around, and there was a tremendous interest that Towson would love. Don Forrester or David Vanko had said that one of their best friends, I think it was David, that one of their best friends working at Rutgers had just recently spoken to him and said, and guess what? We have a 50-acre, field station. He said he couldn't wait to call him back and say, congratulations on your 50-acre field station. We could put that in the middle of the field station. No, he didn't say that because he's not that kind of person. But I got the gist of it, that they would like to do it. That started the relationship back with the alma mater.
And so they have all kinds of things going on.
I told my wife, I haven't been out there like the last 20 times. I've seen Towson people out there like 16 out of 20. They have experiments that they monitor. Even in the middle of the night, they come out at midnight, certain things. See, they have big plywood things where they're looking at the salamanders. They need to see the population. The total population, I guess, is only there when they're sleeping at night or something to that effect.
Maybe.
But they won't see me out at midnight, but they do know how to get in there and how to look at them.
And I think a weather station maybe exploring the Hereford zone.
Oh yeah, that's a notorious thing, the Hereford zone. Different climatic region altogether. Sounds like the Twilight Zone. So yeah, we do have a nice relationship with Towson, and they're very respectful of the property and very cooperative, and I always deal with Lori. I go through Lori on things. And all the people they have, Don and David, are just perfect people to deal with.
What a wonderful partnership. It's a brilliant idea.
I've never heard the word brilliant used in regard to anything I've done, but lucky idea. I like that.
Lucky idea,
Yeah.
then.
My
One last
Labrador's
question
named Lucky,
before
too.
we run out of time.
Okay.
What would you say to young people today who are considering a career as a teacher? What would your words of wisdom to them be?
Very clearly, if it's not an all-out commitment and something that you want to do more than anything else, learn how to fix cars or do something. Don't go in and bore a bunch of kids. Don't go in with an attitude. Don't go in as a punishing. We've met all the teachers. I could tell you the stories going back through the 19 years of Delaney, and the one teacher, the kids walk into the class the first day and sit down, and she starts on the blackboard. BA from Berkeley, MS from Stanford, PhD from Harvard. I would have just written, I am God. You understand that? I am God, you're nothing, sit there, shut up. And there's a lot of people like that. I know that. It's like a normal bell curve. There's sensational teachers There's really horrible teachers. There's a lot of people in the middle that get by. Probably motivates some people, but you're going to have obstacles thrown at you. If you get a bad cooperating teacher, it'll take the patience of Job, and it'll take the willpower to get through it. If you go to they send you to the worst school, which happens a lot, especially in Baltimore County. They send you to an awful school where the discipline's going to take half of your time. I tell you, some people are never going to be able to work through it. I happen to start at the top. You can't really go anywhere. When you start at Delaney, there's really, when a job was open, whoever had the most years in Baltimore County ran to that job. No discipline, no nothing, never. So that's what I would say. I would say, if this is something you really want to do, you really want to help kids, work with kids. Otherwise, I think you could do more harm than good. That's just me. All this is just me. Probably doesn't reflect any policies of Towson.
Well, we wanted you to share your story.
That's just my story. I'm sticking with it, too.
Thank you, Al, for taking your time to do this.
Thank you very much.
We probably have 30 seconds left.
But did we really? He's tough. He wants to get out of here.
No.
Oh, no.
I was thinking about letting it run. We've got a tape and we've got a card recorder here, and the tape's got an 80-minute limit.
Wow.
But that's more of a backup kind of thing if the card fails for some reason.
I mean, is there anything that
No.
you wanted to say that didn't get said?
Sure.
If we've got 4 minutes left, do you want to add it?
Let me think. Undoubtedly. I
Before you
consider it a
take your-
really good sign that Paul didn't fall asleep. I really consider
Listen, Paul is really getting into this.
Yes, indeed.
It's
I'm
true.
going to be an expert on all the oral history here. I've been to that Camp Kiowa too, years ago. And
Really?
We'll talk about that later. Yeah, you got something like you want
I'm
to say.
just trying to think. I do have
Do you have another story, Al?
a story.
Okay, do we have time for a
Go
story?
ahead, we're on the card right now, so we've got.
I gotta say I'm terrible, but I can only think in terms of that when I'm teaching kids. When they ask me a question about psychology and what operant conditioning is, or what, and to tell them some story, and there are things that happen to me. That's another thing I was going to bring up about the educational training.
Yes.
Is how would anybody ever train you that one day you'll walk up behind a student while they're taking a test and the student will flip out, will throw the desk and run out of the room screaming, and to know that that kid was abused sexually very badly, and that when you walk, they gave her to me because they thought I'd be less threatening. I was very young at the time, but they didn't tell me the
details.
There were just a couple stories, but I don't need to tell them. I mean, there are a couple of stories I think I could tell you, and you could tell me if there were. That I come from Poly, which is as strict as it gets. Orderly, strict, this is the way it is, all people will do this. You get a lot of freedom, go out and have lunch on North Avenue, be a minute late on the way back, and you'll never see North Avenue. And there's a girl that brings her guitar into class. And she sets it on her desk, right, as close to her as she can, and she's a great participator. She's a wonderful, she's totally involved. Some days, she picks up the guitar, and she puts her fingers on the string. She doesn't play the guitar, but some days she's actually putting her fingers on the string, and she's following. She's not writing a song at that moment, or she's really following, and she's going to be as vocal as anybody else. And I go to my department chairman and say, this is the first year. Here's a conundrum. Here's a problem. I'm not used to seeing something like this where the kid doesn't have a book out and a pen. She does pretty good on tests, and she's great in class, but she's got this guitar. It's ever present. I'm thinking I should tell her to leave the guitar in her locker or leave it by the doors. I'm just a young 21-year-old teacher. And my department chairman says, do you think this is really a problem? I mean, you are the teacher, and you can tell her to leave the guitar, but is she really causing problems? I'm saying, she's not really causing problems, but to me, it's not the way things are done. And I just don't know what to do. And he says, I just think you ought to. I had a great department chairman. I didn't mention too much about the principal at Delaney and how great he was. But I'm starting to leave the room, and we still haven't decided. And he kind of laughs a little bit and says, okay, I'm just going to tell you. I trust you. I've already seen that you're going to. Her dad's the superintendent of school, Joshua Wheeler. Cheryl Wheeler is a world-famous guitar player. She's cut more CDs.
Really?
I almost tossed her guitar. I've got like 3 stories like that. That's all I've got. So I don't think
So
it's not going to be the be-all or end-all of whether my tape ever gets shown to anybody or whatever.
Isn't that something?
Yeah, and I taught, Tom Profit was my student teacher.
Yes.
Dr. Profit, I got a
Yes.
good Profit story, and I was going to mention that the year I was class advisor, these kids we have a lot of communication, and it was like the first thing before I started coaching, the first thing out of classroom experience. My treasurer is the principal at Sparks, a highlight school for Baltimore County. The secretary is the principal of the school in West Towson, the new, brand new school. She was Sue Cooper, she's Sue Hirschfeld, Sharon Kearney. My vice president was a Phi Beta Kappa from Dickinson, got a Phi Beta Kappa, went into some research work. And my president was the only failure out of my officers, admiral in the U.S. Navy, Jim Gibbs. I think I told so many stories that people will be sick anyhow.
No.
That's why I remember things. I
Thanks.
can't remember anything but the stories.
But they're wonderful stories, and we should, I mean, just to have students who have been so successful.
Successful. That's a hard word to define, isn't it?
Well, it's individually defined.
Right.
I mean, it's what you regard as success.
It is.
I mean, it's, you know, we define our own success.
Yeah, I think success is to find a woman like I found and somehow convince her.
Well, you got her.
I got her.
There you go.
Yeah,
And she just recently retired?
35 years of teaching dance.
Wow. Wonderful.
I've been badgering her for quite a while.
Well, you don't stay retired in any true sense of the
No,
word for any
she's-
length of time, so.
She's been teaching every day somewhere, doing something for me,
Yeah.
teaching a class or two.
And
all
so what are we going to do? I mean, what are you, now that you're both retired?
We started out this summer by going to Alaska and England,
Cool.
and we're,
That was,
I know, we had about a week in between. The Labradors didn't like that too much.
no.
A lot of plans to travel, do
Uh-huh.
things.
Why not? Absolutely.
Yeah, a lot of
And
years
who
we could-
knows? I mean, you just don't read the paper, Al. I mean,
God, I
this
hope
is
there's
this
no
is
more- no
deadly
more-
for you.
No more land for sale.
Yeah. Really?
Yeah, I've always liked land. I have a kind of a weakness for land, but this is a beautiful piece of land.
I'm astounded that it was out there.